Guides are non-printing elements that help you to align objects and position them precisely inside of Illustrator. Let's take a look at how to create various types of guides. Now, I have this guides.ai file already open on my computer, and I want to point out that the first type of guides that you may encounter when using Illustrator are what are referred to as smart guides. Now, smart guides show up in a number of different ways. If you go to the View menu, you want to make sure that Smart Guides are turned on. Now, the first place you'll see Smart Guides is if you grab an object and you start drawing. You can see that as I am moving my cursor, I'm not even clicking yet, it's identifying elements on the page that it thinks you may want to align to. So you can see it's snapping to this object. And then as you click and drag to draw a shape, you see the smart width and height showing up. And when my cursor is intersecting against another object, it's giving me another guide showing me that I'm currently aligned. So like once I draw an object, if I go to draw another one, you'll notice that once I get to the same height as that original object, it's going to snap again, letting me know that I'm close to where I was. So I'm going to go ahead and delete those items, and we'll just press Command 0. And so we can also create regular guides. Now, in order to do that, one of the things you want to do is make sure that you have your rulers displayed. So if you go to your View menu and choose Rulers, Show Rulers, if it says Hide Rulers, they're already showing. And the rulers are where you can initiate creation of guides. Now, if I click on the top ruler and I drag down, you're going to notice that I'm pulling out a guide. And what you can do is if you release the guide, you're going to see that it has drawn a guide. And if you click off of it, you'll see that it's currently cyan in color. Now, what controls that? Well, that is controlled by your Illustrator preferences. So on the Mac platform, you would go to the Illustrator menu. On Windows, you go to the Edit menu. And I'm going to go to Preferences and choose Guides and Grid. And here you can choose what color your guides are going to appear as. So I'll leave mine set to cyan. But do know you can also change the style of the guide from a solid line to dots. So if I choose that, you can see that now my guides are displayed as dots. So whatever your preference. I'm going to go ahead and change mine back to solid. Now, in addition, guides are simply objects, so they're selectable. You can click on them to select them. And notice that when I have this guide selected, if you go to your Layers panel, the color of the selected guide is relevant to the color of the layer that you're putting it on. And as a matter of habit, I typically try to put all of my guides on their own layer to make them easy to hide and show or lock when needed. Although it's not necessary, I find it helpful. And then, of course, when you click off of it, it's cyan as indicated by your preferences. Now, in addition, if you go to the View menu and go down to Guides, you can also hide your guides. So if I choose that, it's going to hide all the guides on my document. I'll go to View Guides and choose Show. And then you can also lock your guides. So if I go to View Guides and choose Lock Guides, you'll notice that I can't select these guides. So if you can't select a guide in your document, either you've locked your guides or they're on a locked layer, one of the two locations. So I'm going to go to View Guides and I'm going to unlock my guides so that I can make changes. So if I wanted to delete this guide, I can just select it and press Delete. Now, the current version of Illustrator introduces a couple of new features, one of which is if I come over to a ruler and I double click on it, it's going to automatically add a guide at that location. So if you find that helpful, you can just double click and those guides are going to get created wherever you double click. Same goes for your vertical guides. So that's a new feature inside of Illustrator. Go ahead and delete those. And then another new feature is the ability for me to hold down the Command or Control key on my keyboard and click on the intersection point of my rulers. When I do that, it's going to pull out a vertical and horizontal guide. So if I wanted to create kind of a boundary for my website here, I could use that technique to easily create the outermost bounds of my website. Now, some other tricks when you're using guides inside of Illustrator is that if I select an object, such as this, I'll go ahead and zoom in a little bit so we can see this. When I drag a ruler down and I drag it to the edge of an object, it'll snap to that object. And that will allow you to precisely align elements when you're dragging guides to your artboard. Now, in addition, you can actually select a shape. So I'm going to click on this rectangle here, and I can convert that shape to a guide. So if I go to the View menu, under Guides, I can choose Make Guides. And if I click off of it, we can see that I now have the guide created. So you can actually create a guide from any shape that you wish. If I draw a circle, I can go to View, Guides, Make Guide, and it's going to convert that circle to a guide as well. So that could be helpful for various purposes. Now, if I select an object that I converted to a guide, and I go to View Guides and choose Release Guides, that will now convert that shape back to an object. In addition, one of the areas where you'll see smart guides in practice is if I select an object like this and I move it, it'll start to recognize other objects that it thinks you may want to align to. For example, when I'm aligned horizontally to that text, I can let go, and now I'm aligned to that. And as I drag it down, it'll let me know when my intersection point aligns with the icon to the right. So it can really help you when you're aligning elements to one another. Now, if I move down here, another area where this could be helpful is if I select an object such as this, I'm going to pull down a guide, and I'm going to let it snap to the top of that object. Now that I have a guide created, I can grab other objects and snap them to that guide to help me to align objects to one another. There we go. So in conjunction with the smart guides and regular guides, there's a number of ways that you can help to align objects on a page. Now, one last thing I'll show you is that when you're dragging a guide out in either direction, if you add the Alt or Option key on your keyboard, it'll flip it from whatever you're dragging to the opposite. So right now I'm dragging a horizontal guide, but if I hold down the Option or Alt key, it'll flip it to a vertical guide. And vice versa, if I drag a vertical guide and hold down Alt or Option, it'll flip it to a horizontal guide. As you can see, guides are easy to create and extremely helpful when positioning and drawing objects in Illustrator. Make good use of them, as they can be a huge time saver.